So Chris Wood is the CEO of RevealDX. And Chris, we're excited to have you here. Go ahead and share your slides, and we'd love to hear about your company. And apparently my dog is going to join the party too.
Great, thanks, Katie. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Wood, CEO of RevealDX. We are a Seattle-based company that produces and sells software that makes clinicians who diagnose and treat lung cancer better at what they do. Lung cancer, if you don't know this, is the #1 cancer killer in the US, responsible for more death than breast, prostate, and colon cancer combined. The good news is that we can cut mortality in high-risk populations by over 20% by screening for cancer using low-dose CT or computed tomography scans. The problem we're addressing is that screening cost is way too high. It is not, however, due to the cost of the CT itself, but because about a third of the time a lung nodule is found by the radiologist. 95% of these nodules are benign, but to find out which is which, we need to spend over $2,000 per nodule. This translates to $10 billion a year. In 80% of the cases, the unnecessary cost takes the form of an interval scan. In other words, the diagnosis of nodules is delayed because the only way to determine their risk is to rescan in a few months and see if it has grown. This results in delayed diagnosis and is obviously not optimal patient care. When action is taken right away, a biopsy or surgery is performed. Biopsies are up to 62% benign, and thoracic surgery is up to 35% benign. These lung biopsies and surgeries are invasive and dangerous, which have a complication rate of 22%, which increases morbidity and mortality and also adds $1.4 billion to the cost. A new proteomics test was introduced in 2020, but it will not work on over 95% of nodules because they must have grown to over 8 millimeters before they start shedding DNA detected by the test. An ideal solution would assist the clinician in determining which nodules need immediate attention and which can be ignored until the next regularly scheduled screening event. Our solution does just that. We use radiomics techniques and AI to triage nodules using only the CT data itself after the nodule is found by the radiologist. We spent several years and examined over 14,000 features to figure out how to build the most accurate classification engine. This engine computes what we call a malignancy similarity index, or MSI, which informs clinical decision-making just like a blood test. We patented key parts of this technology and have added proprietary enhancements, making the software more robust, meaning it will work on a variety of scanners, protocols, and reconstruction techniques. We're explicitly not a black box algorithm. We know how this technology works, and we can QA the system in the field. Making AI robust is the most difficult problem in the use of AI for radiology today, and we have solved it, allowing for the immediate adoption of our solution at any institution. So here are two examples. In this first example, we see a nodule marked by the red dot on the CT scan. The standard of care today would be to wait 6 months and perform one of these interval scans. But our MSI shows that there is an extremely high likelihood of this nodule being malignant. In addition, nearly all the similar nodules we found in our database are malignant. In this case, we would recommend taking immediate action before this cancer grows and metastasizes. In the second example, we see another nodule where an interval scan would also be the standard of care. In this case, however, our MSI shows that there is less than a 1% chance of this nodule developing into cancer in the next 5 years. The correct action in this case is to send the patient home and simply have them continue their normal screening if they are at high risk. And yes, in both of these cases, our MSI was correct. This nodule was proven benign, and the previous nodule was proven to be malignant. We have validated this technology using the National Lung Screening data and have shown a 29% reduction in false positives, removing the need for unnecessary follow-up, while simultaneously detecting nearly half of the malignant nodules before an interval scan. Just the reduction of the false positives will save healthcare in the US $3 billion annually, but more importantly, the faster diagnosis of half of the questionable nodules will surely decrease costs and improve outcomes. In addition, we've just completed a retrospective study with the Saskatchewan Health Authority in Canada, looking at every nodule found in every chest CT in the entire province for the last 5 years. Using these incidentally found nodules, not screening nodules, we found a 24% reduction in false positives and found cancerous nodules without an interval scan 36% of the time. RevealDX was started in March of 2021 when a group of investors experienced in commercialization of imaging-based products, including me, purchased the assets of Mindshare Medical. At the time of purchase, the company had invested over $5 million and had an outstanding product which was technically ready for commercialization, but was awaiting publication of clinical validation data. We've since completed our clinical validation with NLST data as well as the Saskatchewan Health Authority. We've also submitted for a grant with 3 NHS Foundation trusts, and a participating investigator in the NHS study is Dr. Graham Robinson, who is current president of the British Society of Thoracic Imaging. Additional data for validation has been identified, and we expect to perform additional studies beginning in early 2022. We currently have CE Mark and Health Canada approval. We have completed our pre-submission to the FDA, with clearance expected in the first half of 2022. We plan to apply for a CP2 code as well in June, with reimbursement starting perhaps as quickly as 2023. Also in preparation for commercial launch, we recently signed a distribution agreement with Volpara. Volpara's customers currently account for 8% of lung cancer screening in the US. They will begin to market in Australia and their home country of New Zealand. Then we'll begin selling our systems in the US post FDA. Revenue will begin in early 2022. Our US strategy is to target payer provider networks first as they realize the benefits, then sell to conventional fee-for-service providers after obtaining Medicare reimbursement. We have completed our friends and family round as well as $500,000 bridge, and our seed round will bring us to cash flow positive. There are many companies in lung cancer and imaging that could be potential acquirers, and we typically see valuations that are at least 25x EBITDA for rapidly growing companies. We're still a small team right now, but we have assembled an outstanding team who are all industry veterans. I'm a medical physicist who's worked in the industry for 30 years. I'm also a serial entrepreneur who has started 2 companies in the radiology space, including the first company to get FDA cleared to do computer-aided detection for breast cancer in MRI images. Both companies had successful exits. I invite you to reach out to me, the email listed on the slide, and I appreciate your attention and thank you to AngelMD for the opportunity to showcase our company. Thanks.
Chris, we're happy to have you here. Thank you so much for sharing with us about RevealDX. Lots of clapping emojis. So people are excited about it, which is fantastic.
It's good.
I have to say, I think the data on your first slide when you're talking about the problem is the most impressive to me. The number of unnecessary follow-up scans and biopsies that potentially could be prevented with this technology is amazing.
Yeah. And we're doing, since lung cancer screening is pretty new relative to things like breast cancer screening. But one of the things that's unique about lung cancer screening is that it's so difficult to biopsy something you find, which is why this technology is so useful, because you can do that non-invasively. You can assess the risk associated with that nodule.
Sure. So tell us again, because I think this is an important differentiator. What are the things that differentiate you from other platforms that may be out there trying to do this with lung nodules? And then how are you different from traditional AI?
Yeah, so first, there are a lot of companies that are doing detection of lung nodules, which is also an important problem. But there's really no proof that detecting additional nodules has any impact on patient outcomes, right? Whereas something like this, you can trace it directly down to how it's going to impact patients in terms of earlier diagnosis, et cetera. So we're not a detection company. We are a characterization company. There's only 5 companies that have ever gotten approved by the FDA, soon to be 6, for diagnostics, not for detection. And we're using radiomics techniques, which are different than sort of letting the AI system kind of train itself and not knowing really what it's looking at and figuring out how it can determine whether their nodule is dangerous or not. We actually went in and found the features that were clinically relevant and trained our system on those set of features, incorporating AI as well as other, like I said, proprietary techniques in order to build a classification system that would really be able to pull out of a nodule the important diagnostic features, even if it was on a different scanner, even if it was, different reconstruction technique, slightly different protocol. our technology is designed to work in all those cases.
That's fantastic. And I'm going to move on to a few questions from our audience. So since this is AI, speaking of artificial intelligence, is it reasonable to assume the numbers of false positives and identification of malignancy continues to improve with time and usage?
Well, the FDA does not allow you to sort of deploy a system that can be trained in real time as you're kind of going through cases, because they're afraid that you'll drift away from truth if the data isn't so good. But yes, every time we get additional data, we will be going back and looking at the algorithm, seeing if we can tweak it, pull its performance up just a little bit. This is going to be an ongoing maintenance of our system, and we expect it to get better over time. And this is the reason people will pay for our subscription, is that they'll continue to get improved performance over time.
Great. And a question from another entrepreneur here with us tonight. Can you explain why your FDA timeline to get to clearance is so short? Is that because you're leveraging your CE mark approval? This is important, I think, for all entrepreneurs in the audience.
Yeah, the quality system is there, and as evidenced by our CE mark. So a lot of the design controls and a lot of the things that we need in order to even apply are there. But it is a 510K product, so it is a 90-day turnaround by design. Just like Joe's company, we had to do our pre-sub meeting, and we've prepared all the materials for that. Otherwise, if we were ready to submit now, it would literally be a 90-day turnaround. So we're adding in on a little additional time because we're going to run a reader study. We're going to build that data along with the other standard stuff that goes into 510K, and we'll be sending that out at the beginning of the year. That's
fantastic. There are several additional questions I will tell you from our audience. I'm going to take one more. I want to hear, so on your timeline or on one of your slides, you mentioned that some of these nodules are subjected to proteomics. Talk a little bit more about that, because it sounds like that is not universal, but I would imagine if we had that data combined with the data that you're gathering with your system, that could be really huge.
That's right. Two things there, really. One is I was very happy that Biodesix got approved for this because they've demonstrated that you can charge $3,500 per nodule for a proteomics based test that will help you triage this nodule without going in and biopsying, right? So people want this type of approach where you can avoid biopsy and thoracic surgery, and they will pay a significant amount for it. It sort of validates, I said $2,000 per nodule, but it's actually in many healthcare systems quite a bit higher than that. So they validated our pricing model to a certain degree. And of course, what you're saying is absolutely true. We're going to be looking for partnerships in these types of companies, and there are a few of them. Veracyte also has pretty interesting tech that uses a nasal swab. Combining that data with radiomics data that we have on the nodule to trying to figure out what is the risk that this patient has is ultimately where this probably will end up, and we're very much engaged in those conversations.
That's very exciting. Chris, thank you again for being here tonight.